The cardboard sign dissolved in her hands. Dorian watched the ink bleed across her fingers, black rivers splitting into tributaries, staining skin that used to wear diamond rings. Rain hammered the pavement between them, each drop exploding like tiny grenades against concrete that smelled of gasoline and rotting newspapers. He'd been reaching for his truck keys when he heard it. That voice. "Please, anything helps." 7 years collapsed into 7 seconds. His hand froze halfway to his pocket, keys biting into his palm hard enough to leave marks. The woman huddled against the brick wall didn't look up. Couldn't look up, maybe. But her voice carried the same crack it had the night she'd packed her suitcase and walked out on him, and their 3-month-old daughter, Lyra. The rain fell harder now, turning the sidewalk into a mirror that reflected nothing but gray sky and darker gray buildings. Commuters rushed past, umbrellas tilting away from the homeless woman like she carried something contagious. A businessman in a wool coat actually stepped into the street to avoid her, his polished shoes splashing through a puddle that soaked her already drenched sneakers. Dorian's chest tightened. His daughter Arden was home right now, probably sprawled across the living room floor with her homework, safe and dry and loved. He'd built that safety from nothing, from eviction notices and medical bills he couldn't pay, from nights when he'd held a screaming infant with one hand and called his second job with the other to beg for more hours. Before we continue, I need to ask you something that might change how you see this entire story. Have you ever had to choose between the person who destroyed you and the person you used to be before they did? The woman's shoulders shook. Not from cold, Dorian knew that tremor. He'd felt it himself, back when the landlord had changed the locks and he'd stood in the hallway with Arden strapped to his chest, homeless himself. That was fear, pure animal fear that made your bones feel like they were trying to escape your skin. He should walk away. His therapist had spent 3 years helping him build boundaries, teaching him that forgiveness didn't mean setting yourself on fire to keep someone else warm. Arden needed him whole, not bleeding from old wounds Lyra had carved into him with casual cruelty, but his feet moved forward anyway. "Lyra!" Her head snapped up. The sign dropped from her hands, cardboard hitting water, with a sound like a slap. For a moment, neither of them breathed, just stood there while the city moved around them, indifferent to the gravity crushing the space between their bodies. Her face looked wrong. Not just thin, though her cheekbones cut sharp angles under skin that used to glow. Something else lived in her eyes now, something wild and cornered. The kind of look animals got right before they chewed their own leg off to escape a trap. "Dorian!" His name came out strangled. "Please don't." "What happened to you?" She tried to turn away. But he caught her wrist. She flinched hard enough that his hand opened automatically, releasing her like she'd burned him. That flinch told him more than words could. Someone had taught her to expect pain from unexpected contact. "Rexton," she whispered. The name landed between them like a grenade with the pin pulled. Rexton Vale, real estate investor, social media star, the man who'd convinced Lyra that Dorian was just dead weight, holding her back from the life she deserved. The man who'd posted photos of them in Bali while Dorian had been mixing formula at 3 in the morning, trying to figure out how to pay for the antibiotics Arden needed. "Where is he?" Lyra's laugh came out sharp enough to cut. "Gone. They're looking for him. Federal charges, fraud, theft, take your pick." She wrapped her arms around herself, but it didn't stop the shaking. "He left me with everything. The debts, the lawyers, the people he stole from." A businessman walked past them, phone pressed to his ear, complaining about traffic. 3 teenagers laughed at something on their screen, shoulders bumping as they navigated around Lyra like she was just another piece of street furniture. The world kept spinning, while hers had clearly stopped. "You can't be out here," Dorian said. "I don't have anywhere else." Her voice cracked on the last word. "The shelters aren't safe. The men looking for Rexton, they went through them last week. They threatened me. Told me if I didn't give them what they wanted, they'd—" She stopped, eyes darting to something over his shoulder. Dorian turned. A black SUV sat at the corner, engine running. Headlights off despite the storm turning afternoon into dusk. Rain streamed down its tinted windows, making it look like the vehicle was crying, or sweating. Something about it made the hair on Dorian's neck stand up. The way it sat perfectly still while everything else moved, the way it seemed to be watching without eyes. "How long has that been there?" His voice came out lower than he meant it to. Since yesterday. Lyra's fingernails dug into her own forearms, leaving white crescents in skin that looked too pale. Maybe longer. I stopped keeping track. The SUV's engine revved once, just once, but the sound cut through the rain like a warning shot. Dorian's phone buzzed in his pocket, probably Arden texting to ask when he'd be home. He'd promised her they'd watch that cooking show she loved, the one where the contestants cried when their soufflés collapsed. Normal, safe, predictable. Everything he'd built for her after Lyra had demolished their world. But he couldn't leave someone, even her, to whatever was happening in that SUV. Come on. He grabbed the coffee he'd bought from the cart down the street, pressed it into her hands. The cup was still warm, steam rising from the lid. Lyra stared at it like she'd forgotten what warmth felt like. Where? Just come on. He led her toward his truck, parked 3 blocks away. Behind them, the SUV's engine cut off. The sudden silence felt worse than the sound had, like the moment before lightning strikes when the whole world holds its breath. Lyra climbed into the passenger seat, leaving wet marks on the leather. She clutched the coffee with both hands, not drinking, just holding it like an anchor. Dorian started the engine, checked his mirrors. The SUV pulled away from the curb, slowly, deliberately, following them. Dorian's hands tightened on the wheel. He thought about Arden's homework spread across their living room floor, thought about the parent-teacher conference next week, the birthday party she'd been planning for months, the normal life he'd promised her would never be disrupted by chaos again. The SUV matched his speed exactly, staying 3 car lengths back. Dorian. Lyra's voice shook so hard he could barely understand her. They said if I didn't give them Rexton, they'd come after... She stopped, teeth catching her lower lip hard enough to draw blood. After what? She turned to look at him, and something in her eyes made his stomach drop. After you, and Arden. The truck swerved. Dorian corrected automatically, muscle memory from years of driving exhausted after double shifts. But his mind had gone white with noise. Static overwhelming every thought except one. How did they know his daughter's name? What would you do if the person who destroyed your life showed up begging for help and brought danger to your doorstep? Drop your answer below. The motel sign flickered like a dying heartbeat. Dorian pulled into the parking lot of the East Ridge Motor Lodge, a place so far off the main roads that even GPS seemed reluctant to acknowledge it existed. Cracked asphalt, faded paint, and a neon sign that only had half its letters working. Eastry GE MTRLDGE. Perfect. Lyra hadn't spoken since dropping that bomb about Arden. Just sat there shivering despite the truck's heat blasting full, coffee cooling in her hands, untouched. Every few seconds her eyes would flick to the side mirror, checking for the SUV that had finally peeled off 2 miles back. Or maybe it hadn't. Maybe it was just better at hiding now. Dorian killed the engine. Rain drummed on the roof, turning the world outside into an impressionist painting, all blurred edges and running colors. Through the office window, he could see a clerk watching a small television, blue light washing over his face. Stay here. He didn't wait for Lyra to respond, just climbed out into the downpour and jogged to the office. The door chime sounded thin and desperate, like it was apologizing for the interruption. Inside smelled like burnt coffee and the kind of air freshener that only made things worse. The clerk looked up slowly, taking in Dorian's soaked shirt and the urgency probably written across his face. Help you? Need a room, just tonight. 75? The clerk's eyes drifted past Dorian to the truck, where Lyra was visible through the rain-streaked windshield. Cash only. Of course it was. Dorian pulled out his wallet, counted out bills that should have gone to Arden's school fundraiser. The clerk slid a key across the counter, an actual key, not a card. Room 14. Back in the truck, Lyra had finally taken a sip of the coffee. It left a brown stain on her upper lip that she didn't bother wiping away. She looked hollowed out, like someone had scraped away everything inside her and left only the shell. Come on. Room 14 sat at the end of the row, partially hidden by an overgrown hedge that hadn't been trimmed in years. Dorian unlocked the door, flicked on the light, a single bulb that cast more shadows than it eliminated. The room was exactly what he'd expected. 2 double beds with comforters that had probably been there since the 90s, a television bolted to the dresser, and a bathroom he could see from the doorway with tiles that might have been white once. Lyra sank onto the nearest bed without taking off her wet jacket. Water pooled on the comforter around her, darkening the fabric. She stared at her hands like they belonged to someone else. Dorian locked the door, checked the window. It faced the parking lot, giving them a clear view of anyone approaching. Then he turned back to Lyra, and all those years of therapy about boundaries and self-preservation crashed into the simple fact that he couldn't just leave her like this. Even if she'd left him worse. "Tell me everything." She laughed, but no humor lived in the sound. "Where do I start? When Rexton promised me the world? When I believed him? When I realized too late that his investments were just elaborate theft?" Her fingers twisted together, knuckles going white. "Or should I start with the part where he used your name?" The room tilted. "What?" "He forged documents, contracts, property deeds, loan applications." Each word came out mechanical, practiced, like she'd been rehearsing this confession for weeks. "Put your name on things you never agreed to, never even saw. Made it look like you were his business partner." Dorian's legs went numb. He sat down hard on the other bed, the springs protesting under his weight. "Why would he?" "Insurance." Lyra finally looked at him, and her eyes held something close to shame. "If things went wrong, you'd take the fall too. Split the blame, split the investigation. He thought you'd never find out, that he'd fix everything before it mattered." But he didn't. "No." She pulled her knees to her chest, making herself smaller. "He ran, left me holding everything, and now the people he stole from, they think I know where he is, think I'm hiding something." Through the thin walls, Dorian could hear a television playing in the next room. Canned laughter at odds with the pressure building in his chest. He thought about his apartment, his job at Crestline Dynamics, his daughter sleeping safely in her bed, everything he'd built from scratch after Lyra had demolished him. And now this? "The men in the SUV," he said slowly. "Who are they?" "I don't know their names." "But they're not police." Lyra's voice dropped to barely a whisper. "They're the kind of men who make problems disappear, and right now, I'm a problem they need to solve." A car door slammed outside. Dorian was at the window before conscious thought caught up, peering through the gap in the curtains. The parking lot sat empty except for his truck and two other vehicles that had been there when they arrived. No black SUV, no men in dark coats. But his heart wouldn't slow down. He remembered Rexton's Instagram posts, the smug smile, the expensive watches, the captions about leveling up and leaving dead weight behind. Comments had flooded those posts, strangers congratulating him for upgrading from Dorian's basic life. Lyra had liked every single one. Now she sat on a motel bed, homeless and hunted, while Rexton was probably on a beach somewhere counting stolen money. "You should have gone to the police." "With what?" Lyra's voice cracked. "Everything I could tell them would make me an accessory. And the people looking for Rexton, they have connections everywhere. You think a police station would stop them?" Dorian's phone buzzed. He pulled it out, saw Arden's name on the screen. "Dad, where are you? You said you'd be home by 6. The time glowed in the corner, 6:47 p.m. He texted back quickly. "Sorry, baby, work emergency. Order pizza, I'll be home soon." 3 dots appeared, then, "Everything okay? Everything's fine. Love you too, Dad." He pocketed the phone, chest tight. Arden didn't know that fine was a lie. Didn't know that the father she trusted to keep her safe had just brought danger within striking distance of their home. "I need to think," Dorian said, more to himself than Lyra. "Figure out how to untangle you from this without—" Footsteps outside, heavy, deliberate. They both froze. The footsteps moved along the walkway, passing room after room, getting closer. Dorian's hand went to his phone, finger hovering over 911. But Lyra shook her head frantically, eyes wide with terror that looked far too practiced. The footsteps stopped, right outside their door. Silence crashed down like a physical weight. Dorian could hear his own heartbeat, could hear Lyra's breathing going shallow and fast, could hear the rain hammering everything beyond these paper-thin walls. A knock split the quiet, 3 measured raps. Knuckles on wood, patient and unhurried. Then a voice, male and calm, speaking through the door. "Mr. Hale, we need to talk. Would you open that door, or would you run? Comment what you'd do." Dorian's hand moved without permission, reaching for the doorknob. Lyra grabbed his wrist, nails digging in hard enough to hurt. Her eyes screamed everything her mouth couldn't say. "Don't. Please. They'll kill us both." But the voice came again, measured and almost polite. "I know you're in there, Mr. Hale. I'm not here to cause problems. I just need information." The lie sat so smooth in those words that Dorian almost believed it. Almost. But Lyra's terror felt real against his skin, her pulse hammering where her fingers wrapped around his wrist. He pulled free gently, moved to the window instead of the door, peered through the gap in the curtains. A man stood on the walkway, tall, lean, wearing a dark coat that probably cost more than Dorian's truck. Rain rolled off him like he was made of something water couldn't touch. His face held no expression at all, which somehow felt worse than anger would have. Behind him, partially hidden by the overgrown hedge, the black SUV sat waiting. They'd found them anyway. "Mr. Hale," the man's voice never rose, never fell. "I can wait here all night, or you can open the door and we can have a civilized conversation." Dorian glanced back at Lyra. She'd gone paper white, pressing herself against the headboard like she could phase through it if she just pushed hard enough. Whatever these men had done to her before, it had left marks deeper than bruises. He made a decision that would probably haunt him. "Stay quiet," he whispered to Lyra, then cracked the door open 6 inches, enough to talk, not enough for the man to push through. Up close, the man looked even less human, eyes like polished stone, skin stretched tight over bones that suggested he'd been carved rather than born. He didn't smile, didn't frown, just existed with the kind of calm that came from knowing he could end lives without losing sleep over it. "Mr. Hale," the man said, "thank you for being reasonable. What do you want?" "Cooperation." The man's gaze flicked past Dorian to where Lyra was probably visible in his peripheral vision. "Your ex-wife was involved with Rexton Vale. We need to know where he is." "I don't know where he is. Haven't seen him in years." "That may be true." The man pulled out his phone, tapped the screen twice. "But this isn't..." He turned the phone to face Dorian. Documents filled the screen. Contracts, property deeds, loan applications. And there, on every single one, was Dorian's signature, or something that looked exactly like it. The dates ranged from 6 months ago to 2 weeks ago, all bearing his name next to Rexton's. Dorian's stomach dropped through the floor. "I never signed those?" "Perhaps, but they exist. And they list your home address, your employer, your daughter's school." The man pocketed his phone. Rexton Vale was very thorough about creating connections. The word daughter made Dorian's vision go red at the edges. "You stay away from her." "That depends entirely on your cooperation, Mr. Hale." The man straightened his coat collar. Water still sliding off the fabric like it was repelled by something deeper than waterproofing. "We need Rexton Vale. Your ex-wife knows where he is. Convince her to tell us, and this ends." "She doesn't know." "Then we have a problem." The man turned slightly, gesturing toward the SUV. "My associates are less patient than I am. If we don't resolve this soon, they'll want to have their own conversations. Those conversations tend to be messier." Dorian's hands curled into fists. 7 years of raising Arden alone had taught him control, how to swallow rage, how to be patient, how to build instead of destroy. But right now, every muscle in his body wanted to drag this man's face across the concrete until he promised to leave them alone. "I need time," Dorian said carefully. 24 hours. The man stepped back. "After that, we expand our search parameters, starting with..." He smiled for the first time, and it looked like something learned from a manual. "Well, you understand." He walked away, coat swirling around his legs, and climbed into the SUV. It pulled away slowly, taillights disappearing into the rain like red eyes closing. Dorian shut the door, locked it, pressed his forehead against the wood. Behind him, Lyra started crying. Not the quiet, dignified kind, the gasping, full-body kind that sounded like drowning. He turned to see her curled into herself on the bed, shoulders shaking so hard the whole mattress moved. "They're going to kill us," she sobbed. "They're going to kill all of us." "No, they're not." Dorian sat beside her, not touching, just present. "I won't let that happen. You can't stop them. You don't understand who these people are, what they're capable of." "Then tell me." She looked up, mascara smeared down her face like war paint. They work for Marcus Landry. He's not just some businessman Rexton stole from. He's connected to everything. Real estate, banking, politicians, judges. When Rexton took his money, he didn't just steal. He humiliated Marcus in front of people who expect him to be untouchable. So this isn't about money. It's about reputation. Lyra wiped her face, but it didn't help. Marcus will destroy everyone connected to Rexton just to prove he can. And thanks to those forged documents, you're connected now. Dorian stood, paced to the window, back to the door. His mind spun through options, discarded most of them. Going to the police would take time they didn't have, and if Marcus Landry really had the connections Lyra claimed, it might make things worse. Running would just delay the inevitable. These men would find them eventually, which left only one option. "I have an idea," he said slowly, "but you're not going to like it. Does it involve us staying alive? Maybe." Lyra pushed herself upright, wiping her face with shaking hands. "Then I'll take it." Dorian pulled out his phone, found the number he'd been avoiding thinking about. Marin Vega, his boss at Crestline Dynamics, sharp, calculating, the kind of woman who saw problems as puzzles to solve. She'd been dropping hints for months that she was interested in more than a professional relationship, but Dorian had always kept that wall firmly in place. Now he needed to knock it down, not because he wanted to use her, but because she was the only person he knew who might have resources to fight back against someone like Marcus Landry. He dialed before he could talk himself out of it. 2 rings then. "Dorian, it's almost 9. Is everything okay?" Her voice carried concern, which meant she'd noticed something in his tone even before he spoke. That was Marin, observant to the point of unnerving. "I need to talk to you, in person, tonight." A pause. "Where are you?" "Eastridge Motor Lodge, room 14. Another pause, longer this time. Marin was calculating, weighing risks and possibilities. "I'll be there in 30 minutes. Marin, whatever this is, Dorian, you don't handle it alone." She hung up before he could argue. Lyra stared at him. Who was that? Someone who might be able to help, or someone who'll run the moment she realizes how bad this is. Dorian thought about Marin's sharp suits and sharper mind, the way she'd built Crestline Dynamics from nothing into one of the city's most respected logistics companies, the way she moved through boardrooms like a shark through water, efficient, focused, dangerous when she needed to be. "She won't run," he said, more certain than he probably should be. They waited in silence, listening to rain hammer the roof and walls. At one point, Lyra went to the bathroom, and Dorian heard water running, heard her trying to clean herself up. She emerged looking marginally more human, hair still wet but combed, face scrubbed of smeared makeup. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for not leaving me there." Dorian didn't respond. Wasn't sure what to say. Part of him still wanted to leave her, to drop her at a police station and drive away from all of this. But another part, the part that Arden had shaped over 7 years, couldn't abandon someone who needed help, even someone who'd once abandoned him. Headlights swept across the curtains. Dorian moved to the window, saw a sleek silver sedan pulling into the lot. Marin climbed out, scanning the area with the same focus she brought to everything, then walked straight to room 14 like she'd memorized the layout already. He opened the door before she knocked. Marin stepped inside, took in the scene, Dorian's tension, Lyra's obvious fear, the general atmosphere of things gone terribly wrong. Her expression didn't change, but something shifted in her eyes. She turned to Lyra. "I'm Marin Vega, and you are?" Lyra, his ex-wife. "I see." Marin's gaze moved to Dorian. "Start from the beginning. Tell me everything. If your past came back bleeding and begging for help, would you risk everything to save them? Drop your answer below." Marin listened without interrupting. Dorian laid it out piece by piece, finding Lyra on the street, the black SUV, Rexton's forged documents, Marcus Landry's reputation, the man who'd knocked on their door with threats wrapped in politeness. As he spoke, Marin's expression remained perfectly neutral, but her fingers drummed once against her thigh. The only tell that her mind was working through scenarios faster than most people could follow. When he finished, silence filled the room like water rising. Then Marin said, "Show me the documents." Dorian pulled out his phone, pulled up the photos he'd managed to screenshot from the man's device when the screen had been visible. Marin took the phone, zoomed in on signatures and dates, her eyes scanning with the kind of precision that had built her company from the ground up. "These are good forgeries," she said finally. "Professional, but they have inconsistencies. The signature pressure varies. Some letter forms don't match." She looked at Dorian. "With the right lawyer, we could prove fraud, but that takes time." "We don't have time," Lyra said from the bed. "They gave us 24 hours. Marin's gaze shifted to her, assessing. Whatever she saw made something in her expression harden. "You've dealt with Marcus Landry's people before." It wasn't a question. Lyra nodded, wrapping her arms around herself. 3 weeks ago, they found me at a shelter, dragged me into an alley, told me if I didn't give them Rexton, they'd make me regret being born." Her voice went flat, distant. "They demonstrated what regret meant. I spent 2 days in an emergency room, lying about how I got hurt." Dorian's stomach turned. Marin's expression didn't change, but her fingers stopped drumming. "Rexton Vale," Marin said. "Where is he, really?" "I don't know." Lyra's voice cracked. "I swear to God, I don't know. He stopped answering my calls 2 months ago. Emptied our accounts, disappeared. The last message I got just said, 'sorry,' and nothing else." Marin crossed to the window, looked out at the parking lot, where rain continued its assault on everything. Her mind was clearly working through angles, contingencies, possibilities. When she turned back, something in her face had shifted. Not harder exactly, but more resolved. "Marcus Landry's reach is extensive," she said. "But he's not untouchable. People like him stay powerful because everyone believes they're untouchable. Break that belief, and the whole structure cracks." "How do we break it?" Dorian asked. Marin smiled, but it wasn't warm. "We find leverage. Something he wants more than revenge." "Like what?" "Like proof that his operation isn't as clean as he pretends." Marin pulled out her own phone, typed something quickly. "Marcus built his empire on the appearance of legitimacy. If that appearance crumbles, if the right people start asking uncomfortable questions, he'll have bigger problems than one missing con artist." Lyra stood up slowly. "You're talking about going after him. That's suicide." "No." Marin's eyes stayed on her phone screen. "I'm talking about making him want to leave you alone. There's a difference." She looked up at Dorian. "But it requires trust and risk." "What kind of risk?" "The kind where you don't ask me how I know the things I'm about to tell you." The room's temperature seemed to drop. Dorian studied Marin, the woman he'd worked for, respected, kept at arm's length because mixing business and personal felt like asking for disaster. But right now, she didn't look like his boss. She looked like someone who'd walked through darker places than he'd realized. "Okay," he said. Marin nodded once. "I have a property outside the city. It's secure, off-grid. You can't stay here. This motel is too exposed. Pack up. We leave in 5 minutes." "Just like that?" Lyra's voice held disbelief. "You're going to help us? Why?" Marin's gaze moved to her, then back to Dorian. "Because he asked." Simple. Final. Like that was the only reason that mattered. 3 minutes later, they were in Marin's sedan, following her through streets that grew progressively emptier as they left the city center behind. Dorian rode shotgun, Lyra in the back, nobody speaking. The rain had softened to a drizzle, but the sky remained dark, pressing down like a weight. "How did you know to help us?" Dorian asked quietly, watching streetlights blur past. Most people would have walked away. Marin kept her eyes on the road. "Most people haven't spent years watching you hold everything together while pretending you weren't breaking." She glanced at him briefly. "You think I didn't notice the double shifts? The times you came in exhausted but never complained? The way you never talked about your ex-wife even when other people asked? That was just survival." "I know." Her hands tightened on the wheel. "I recognize it because I've lived it." Dorian wanted to ask what she meant, but her tone made it clear that doors stayed closed, at least for now. They drove for 40 minutes, leaving paved roads for gravel, then for a dirt path that wound through trees whose branches formed a tunnel overhead. Finally, Marin pulled up to a gate that looked like it hadn't been opened in years, but slid aside smoothly when she entered a code on a hidden keypad. Beyond the gate sat a house, modern, glass and steel, somehow both exposed and hidden at once. Solar panels covered the roof, and Dorian spotted cameras positioned at strategic angles. This wasn't just a property. This was a fortress disguised as a home. "Welcome to my insurance policy," Marin said, killing the engine. Inside, the house felt larger than it looked from outside. Open floor plan, minimal furniture, everything positioned for function over comfort. But it was clean, secure, and most importantly, isolated. Marin moved through the space like she'd designed every inch herself, which she probably had. She gestured Lyra toward a bathroom. "Clean up. There are clothes in the bedroom upstairs. Take whatever fits." Lyra hesitated, then disappeared up the stairs without arguing, which left Dorian alone with Marin. She moved to the kitchen, started making coffee without asking if he wanted any. The domestic normalcy of it felt surreal after everything that had happened. Dorian stood awkwardly in the living room, trying to figure out what to say. Marin spoke first. "You're wondering why I'm doing this?" "Yes." "Fair question." She poured 2 mugs, handed him one. "The truth is complicated, but the simple version is that I don't like bullies. And Marcus Landry is the worst kind. The kind who hides behind legitimacy while destroying lives. You know him. I know of him." Marin sipped her coffee, eyes distant. "Years ago. He tried to acquire my company. When I refused, he made things difficult. Permits delayed, contracts mysteriously canceled, inspectors finding violations that didn't exist. I spent 2 years fighting him off." "How did you win?" "By learning how to fight his way." She looked at Dorian directly. "Which means I have resources he doesn't know about. And connections that can make his life very uncomfortable if necessary." Dorian processed that, trying to square it with the boss who'd always seemed so straightforward, so by the book. "You're not who I thought you were." "Few people are." Marin set down her mug. "But here's what matters. I can help you. I can protect Lyra, clear your name from those forged documents, maybe even track down Rexton Vale if he's stupid enough to still be breathing." "In exchange for what?" "Nothing." She smiled slightly. "Consider it an investment in good people. Lord knows there aren't enough of them." Footsteps on the stairs announced Lyra's return. She'd showered, changed into clothes that fit better than her rain-soaked rags, but her eyes still held that haunted look that suggested no amount of clean water could wash away what she'd been through. "Thank you," she said to Marin, "for all of this." Marin nodded. "Get some rest. Tomorrow we start planning." Lyra moved toward the couch, then paused, turned back to Dorian. "I need to tell you something. Something I should have said at the motel." His chest tightened. "What?" She looked at the floor, at the walls, anywhere but at him. "Rexton didn't just forge your name randomly. He chose you specifically because—" She stopped, visibly struggling. "Because why, Lyra?" "Because I told him about you." Her voice broke. "When we first got together, I told him everything. How you'd struggled, how you'd survived, how you'd rebuilt your life. And he said you sounded like the perfect patsy, someone who'd already been knocked down, who nobody would believe if things went wrong." The words landed like physical blows. Dorian's vision narrowed to a tunnel with Lyra at the end of it. "You set me up. I didn't know that's what he was doing. I thought—" Tears streamed down her face. "I thought I was just venting about my ex. I didn't realize he was taking notes, building a plan. By the time I understood, he'd already started using your information." Dorian's hands shook. 7 years of therapy, of learning to manage anger, of being the calm parent Arden needed. All of it threatened to crack apart. Marin's voice cut through the white noise in his head. "Dorian, breathe." He did. Once, twice, forcing air into lungs that wanted to shut down. Lyra continued, desperate now. "I tried to stop him, told him to use someone else, anyone else. But he said it was too late. Everything was already in motion. And then he disappeared, and I realized—" "Realized what?" Dorian's voice came out flat. "That he'd planned to frame you from the beginning. That's why he got involved with me in the first place. He researched you, found me, used me to get close to your information. I wasn't his partner." She looked up, eyes red. "I was just another tool." The silence that followed felt like the moment after an explosion, when the world hasn't decided yet whether to collapse or hold. Then Marin spoke, voice colder than Dorian had ever heard. "Where is Rexton Vale?" "I don't—" "Yes, you do." Marin stepped closer to Lyra, and suddenly the polished professional was gone, replaced by something harder. "You've been protecting him this whole time. Even after everything he did, you're still protecting him. So I'll ask once more. Where is he? Lyra's face crumpled. She reached into her pocket, pulled out a folded piece of paper. Her hands shook as she unfolded it, revealing an address written in shaky handwriting. He's hiding at his mother's place. Outside the city, near Oakmont. I was supposed to meet him there last week, but I couldn't. Her voice broke completely. I couldn't face him after realizing what he'd done to both of us. Marin took the paper, studied it, looked at Dorian. Your call. We can pass this to the police, or we can handle it ourselves. Dorian's phone buzzed. Another text from Arden. Dad? When are you coming home? I'm worried. He read it twice, then looked at the address in Marin's hand. Thought about his daughter, waiting in their apartment, trusting that her father would always come back, trusting that he'd keep her safe from monsters like Rexton Vale. We handle it, he said quietly. Tonight. Marin nodded. Lyra started to speak, but Dorian raised a hand. You stay here. This doesn't involve you anymore. But stay, here. He looked at her, and whatever she saw in his face made her sink back onto the couch without another word. Marin was already moving toward a closet, pulling out a jacket. It's 2 hours to Oakmont. We leave in 10 minutes. As Dorian followed her, preparing to confront the man who'd systematically destroyed his life, his phone buzzed one more time. Unknown number. He opened it. Mr. Hale, tick-tock. 18 hours remaining. Below the text, a photo of Arden's school. Taken today. Someone just threatened your child. Do you call the police? Or do you become someone they should fear? Comment what you'd do. The photo burned in Dorian's mind like acid. His daughter's school, the red brick building where she learned fractions, the playground where she'd skinned her knee last month, the front steps where he dropped her off every morning with a kiss on the forehead and a promise that everything would be okay. They'd photographed it like a threat wrapped in politeness. Marin noticed his face. What is it? He showed her the screen without speaking. Her expression went cold in a way that suggested she'd made calculations and didn't like the results. She glanced at Lyra, still collapsed on the couch, then back to Dorian. We move faster, she said simply. They were in Marin's car 3 minutes later, gravel spitting under tires as she reversed out too fast. The night had gone full dark now, clouds blocking whatever moon might have existed. The trees on either side of the dirt road looked like they were leaning in, listening to secrets they had no right to hear. Dorian called his neighbor, Mrs. Chen, a retired teacher who'd watched Arden countless times before. She answered on the second ring, voice warm and sleepy. Dorian, everything okay, honey? I need a favor, big one. Can you go pick up Arden from my place, take her to yours for the night? Tell her it's a surprise sleepover. A pause. Mrs. Chen was too smart not to hear the tension buried in his voice. Is she in danger? No, but I need to know she's not alone tonight. Say no more. I'll be there in 15 minutes. She hung up without asking anything else, which was why Dorian trusted her more than most people. He texted Arden, Mrs. Chen is picking you up for a special sleepover. Pack your overnight bag. Be ready in 15 minutes. Love you. 3 dots appeared immediately. Dad. What's going on? Nothing bad, I promise. Just work stuff running late. You'll have fun. Mrs. Chen said she'd make those dumplings you love. Okay. Love you, Dad. Love you more than the whole world, baby. He pocketed the phone, watched trees blur past. Marin drove like someone intimately familiar with breaking speed limits without getting caught. Fast enough to matter. Controlled enough to never lose grip. Tell me about Oakmont, Dorian said. Small town, 40 miles east. Mostly farmland, some old money families who've been there for generations. Rexton's mother, Diane Vale, owns property on the outskirts. Big house, lots of land, privacy. How do you know all this? Marin's jaw tightened. When Marcus Landry came after my company, I did research on everyone in his network. Rexton worked for him briefly before going independent. I kept files. Dorian absorbed that. You've been watching him for years. I watch everyone who might become a problem. She glanced at him. Paranoid. Maybe, but effective. The highway stretched ahead, empty except for occasional trucks hauling cargo to places that couldn't wait for morning. Rain started again, lighter now, just enough to make the windshield wipers necessary. Their rhythmic motion felt hypnotic, almost calming, which made the tension in Dorian's chest feel worse by contrast. "After this," he said quietly, "I need to disappear for a while. Take Arden somewhere safe until this is over." "You won't need to." Marin's voice carried certainty that felt either comforting or terrifying. "By morning, Marcus Landry will have bigger problems than you." "How can you be sure?" "Because I'm going to give him a choice. Leave you alone or watch his empire crumble in real time." She smiled, but it looked like something carved from ice. "Men like Marcus respond to force. They respect it. So that's what we'll give him." Dorian wanted to ask what she meant, but her tone suggested that door was locked. He settled for staring out the window, watching his own reflection ghost across the glass. 7 years of single fatherhood had taught him patience, taught him to control his temper, taught him that violence solved nothing. But right now, seeing that photo of Arden's school, patience felt like weakness. They exited the highway, took smaller roads that wound through farmland where houses sat far apart, lights distant and lonely. The GPS on Marin's phone counted down miles, then yards, then announced their arrival in a voice that sounded far too cheerful. The house sat back from the road, partially hidden by trees that needed trimming. 2 stories, white paint peeling in places, a wraparound porch that had probably looked charming once, but now just looked neglected. 1 light burned in an upstairs window. Rexton's car, a silver Audi that Dorian recognized from those Instagram posts, sat in the driveway. "He's here," Marin said unnecessarily. She parked on the road, killed the lights. They sat in darkness, watching the house like predators studying prey. Dorian's heart hammered against his ribs, adrenaline making his fingers tingle. "What's the plan?" he asked. "We knock, we talk, we get what we need." Marin's eyes stayed on the house. "If he runs, I've got people on the back entrance." "You have people?" "I always have people, Dorian. How do you think I built my company in this city?" She opened her door, stepped out into the drizzle. "Come on." They approached the house on foot, gravel crunching too loud under their shoes. Motion sensor lights flickered on, painting them in harsh white light that made Dorian feel exposed. But nobody emerged to challenge them. Nobody called out. Marin knocked, 3 solid raps that echoed. Silence. She knocked again, harder. Finally, footsteps inside. The door cracked open 6 inches, security chain visible in the gap. A woman's face appeared, 60-ish, tired eyes, gray hair pulled back in a practical bun. "Can I help you?" Diane Vale's voice carried the kind of caution that came from too many late-night visitors bearing bad news. "We're here to see Rexton," Marin said pleasantly. "It's urgent." "My son isn't here." "Mrs. Vale, we know he is. His car is in your driveway." Marin's smile never wavered. "We're not the police. We're not here to hurt anyone. We just need information." Diane's eyes moved to Dorian, studying his face. Something in her expression shifted. Recognition, maybe, or guilt. "You're Dorian Hale." It wasn't a question. "Yes, ma'am. He talks about you." She looked like she wanted to say more, then stopped herself. "Wait here." The door closed. Dorian heard muffled voices inside, an argument building volume. Then the chain rattled, the door swung open, and Diane stood aside. 5 minutes, she said. Then you leave. They entered a house that smelled like old books and lavender. The furniture looked expensive but outdated, like it had been purchased decades ago and never replaced. Photos covered the walls, Rexton at various ages, always smiling that same confident smile that had probably charmed 100 people before destroying them. Diane led them to the living room, where Rexton stood by the fireplace like he was posing for a portrait. He'd lost weight since those Instagram photos, his face sharper now, eyes carrying something that might have been fear if you looked close enough. "Dorian." Rexton's voice still carried that smooth confidence, but cracks showed underneath. "This is unexpected." "Is it?" Dorian stepped closer, hands clenching at his sides. "You forge my name on dozens of documents, frame me for your theft, have your criminal friends threaten my daughter, and you didn't expect me to find you?" Rexton's smile faltered. "I never meant for things to go this far." "Bullshit." The word came out harder than Dorian intended. Diane flinched, but he didn't care. "You planned this from the beginning. Use Lyra to get information about me. Set me up as your fall guy. Everything was calculated." "Not everything." Rexton moved away from the fireplace, putting distance between them. Marcus Landry wasn't part of the plan. I thought I could handle his money, invest it, return it with profit. Standard operation. But you stole it instead. I borrowed it, long term. Rexton's voice took on a pleading edge. The investments went bad, not my fault. Market volatility, unexpected. Stop lying. Marin spoke for the first time, her voice cutting through Rexton's excuses like a blade. You never invested anything. You took Marcus's money, moved it through shell companies, and planned to disappear. The only thing that went wrong was you weren't as smart as you thought. Rexton's face went pale. Who are you? Someone with a very long memory. Marin pulled out her phone, tapped the screen. You worked for Marcus Landry's organization 3 years ago. Entry-level money laundering, nothing major. But you saw how the system worked, saw the weaknesses. When you left, you took client lists, account numbers, routing information, everything you needed to steal from him later. How do you... I told you, long memory. Marin's eyes stayed cold. Now, here's what's going to happen. You're going to give me copies of everything you took, every document, every file, every password. Then you're going to call Marcus Landry and confess. Rexton laughed, but it sounded desperate. That's suicide. He'll kill me. Probably. But he'll definitely kill Dorian and his daughter if you don't. Marin stepped closer. So ask yourself, is your life worth more than a 7-year-old girl's? The room went silent except for the old grandfather clock in the corner, ticking like a countdown to judgment. Diane spoke from the doorway. Give them what they want, Rexton. Mom? I didn't raise you to hurt children. Her voice carried disappointment so heavy it made the air feel thick. Whatever mistakes you've made, fix this one, now. Rexton looked at his mother, then at Dorian, then at Marin. Something in his expression finally cracked. The confidence, the charm, all of it fell away, leaving only a scared man who'd bet everything and lost. Fine. He moved to a desk in the corner, opened a laptop. Everything's encrypted, but I'll give you the passwords. Just promise me you'll tell Marcus I cooperated. No promises, Marin said, but it's better than the alternative. As Rexton typed, transferring files to a USB drive Marine produced from her pocket, Dorian's phone buzzed. Mrs. Chen, I have Arden. She's safe. Asking about you, but happy to have a sleepover. Whatever you're dealing with, handle it. We'll be here. Relief flooded through him so intense, he had to grip the back of a chair to stay steady. Arden was safe. That was all that mattered. The USB drive clicked into place. Rexton handed it to Marin like he was surrendering a weapon. Everything's there. Financial records, client lists, communication logs. Enough to bury Marcus if he doesn't back off. Marin pocketed the drive. Smart choice. What happens now? Rexton asked. Now you disappear. Marin headed for the door, Dorian following. Really disappear this time, because if I see you again, or if anything happens to Dorian or his daughter, I'll personally hand you to Marcus with a bow on top. They left him standing in his mother's living room, looking smaller than his Instagram profile ever suggested. In the car, driving away from the house, Dorian finally let himself breathe. Is it over? He asked. Almost. Marin checked her mirrors, satisfied they weren't being followed. One more stop, then yes, it's over. Where are we going? She smiled, genuinely this time, warmth creeping into her eyes. To have a conversation with Marcus Landry, and trust me, he's going to listen. When everything's on the line, would you trust someone you barely know to save you? Comment your answer. The motel room was empty. Not just empty, ransacked. The bedspread Lyra had been sitting on hung half off the mattress. Pillows scattered across the floor, like someone had thrown them, searching for something hidden underneath. The bathroom door stood open, revealing wet towels in a heap. The medicine cabinet hanging crooked on broken hinges. Dorian's heart stopped. They'd left her here. Told her to stay put, promised they'd be back. And now the room looked like a crime scene waiting for police tape. He moved through the space quickly, checking the closet under the bed, anywhere a person could hide. Nothing. Just the smell of cheap cleaning products and something else. Cologne, expensive and out of place. Someone had been here. Marin stood in the doorway, scanning the room with the same focus she'd used in Rexton's mother's house. Her hand moved to her phone, fingers already dialing before Dorian could ask who she was calling. It's me, she said when someone answered. Run the security footage from Eastridge Motor Lodge, room 14, last 2 hours. A pause. Yes, now. She hung up, turned to Dorian. My people will have it in 5 minutes. Your people? Dorian's voice came out flat. You keep saying that? Who exactly are your people? The kind who don't ask questions. Marin moved to the window, looked out at the parking lot where their car sat alone under flickering lights. When you build a company in this city, you learn fast. Legal channels only get you so far. Sometimes you need people who operate in the margins. Dorian wanted to unpack that, wanted to ask a dozen questions about who Marin really was beneath the polished exterior. But right now, only one thing mattered. Where's Lyra? His phone buzzed before Marin could answer. Unknown number again. He opened it with hands that wanted to shake. A video file. He pressed play. The screen showed Lyra being walked, not dragged, walked, toward a gray sedan by 2 men in dark suits. She wasn't fighting, wasn't screaming, just moving with them like she'd agreed to go. One of the men opened the back door. Lyra climbed in. The sedan pulled away. Voluntary. She'd left voluntarily. The video ended. A text appeared below it. She made a choice. Mr. Hale, smart woman. Perhaps you should make the same one. Dorian's throat closed. Every instinct screamed that something was wrong with that footage, that Lyra wouldn't just leave after everything. But the evidence sat right there on his screen, undeniable. Marin's phone rang. She answered, listened, her expression darkening with each passing second. When she hung up, she looked at Dorian with something close to sympathy. Security footage confirms it. She left 20 minutes after we did, walked to the parking lot, got in a gray sedan, drove away. No signs of force. The floor tilted. Dorian sat down hard on the edge of the bed. Mind spinning through possibilities that all led to the same conclusion. Lyra had played him. Again. Led him into this mess, gotten his help, then disappeared the moment he'd turned his back. But something didn't fit. Check her belongings, he said. Marin moved to the small pile of items Lyra had carried. A worn backpack, some clothes they'd given her from Marin's house. She opened the backpack, pulled out a wallet with no cash, a phone with a cracked screen, and at the bottom, wrapped in a t-shirt. A baby blanket, pink and white, faded from washing, one corner torn where it had been gripped too many times by small hands. Dorian recognized it instantly. He'd bought it at a discount store the week before Arden was born. Back when money was so tight, he'd had to choose between buying diapers and eating lunch. Lyra had kept it. For 7 years, through everything, she'd kept the blanket from the baby she'd abandoned. Marin saw his expression. What is it? She wouldn't leave without this. Dorian's voice came out hoarse. Whatever that video shows, she didn't go willingly. The footage is wrong. He stood, phone still clutched in his hand. They staged it, made it look voluntary so we'd stop searching. But Lyra would never leave this behind. Marin studied the blanket, then his face. Whatever she saw there made her nod once. Decision made. Then we find her. Her phone rang again. She answered, listened, then her entire body went rigid. When? A pause. Show me. She pulled up something on her screen, face going pale in a way Dorian had never seen. When she turned the phone toward him, his stomach dropped through the floor. Security footage from a storage facility. Grainy, black and white. Timestamp, showing 30 minutes ago. Lyra stood in front of a storage unit, hands shaking as she entered a code. The door rolled up. She reached inside, pulled out a duffel bag. Unzipped it. Even in the poor quality video, the stacks of cash inside were unmistakable. She'd known where Rexton's money was hidden. The whole time, she'd known. Marin's voice cut through the shock. There's more. The footage continued. Lyra closed the bag, started to turn away, then froze. Someone else entered the frame. A man in a dark coat, the same one who'd knocked on their door at the motel. He said something inaudible. Lyra shook her head. He moved closer. She backed up. He grabbed her arm, then the footage cut out. Dorian was already moving toward the door before conscious thought caught up. Marin grabbed his shoulder, spun him around. Think, she said sharply. Where would they take her? I don't know. Yes, you do. Where did Rexton say Marcus Landry operates from? Dorian's mind raced back through the conversation at Diane Vale's house. Rexton had mentioned something, property on the waterfront, a warehouse Marcus used for off-books operations. He'd said it casually, like it didn't matter. The docks, South End, near the old shipping yards. Marin was already heading for the car. That's 30 minutes from here. We should call the police. And tell them what? That your ex-wife, who they'll see leaving voluntarily on camera, was actually kidnapped? They'll laugh us out of the station. Marin started the engine. We handle this ourselves. Dorian climbed in, every muscle in his body pulled tight. The USB drive with Rexton's files sat in Marin's glove compartment. Their leverage against Marcus Landry. But if Marcus already had Lyra and the money, would he even care about exposure? They drove through streets that had gone quiet with late night, past buildings that looked abandoned, even though people probably lived inside them. The closer they got to the docks, the more the city started to decay. Broken streetlights, cracked sidewalks, graffiti marking territory in languages only gangs understood. Marin's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, jaw tightening. My contact at the Port Authority. Marcus Landry has a warehouse at Pier 17. It's listed under a shell company, but the ownership traces back to him. How fast can we get there? 7 minutes. She took a corner too fast, tires squealing. But Dorian, we need a plan. We can't just walk in. Watch me. That's not a plan, that's suicide. Marin's voice carried steel. Marcus will have security, probably armed. If we go in blind, we're both dead. Dorian stared out the window at the industrial landscape rushing past. Somewhere in one of these buildings, Lyra was terrified, possibly hurt. Definitely regretting whatever choices had led her here. And despite everything she'd done to him, despite the betrayals and the lies, he couldn't abandon her. Not when Arden would someday ask him what kind of man her father was. Then what do you suggest? Marin's hands tightened on the wheel. We use what we have. The files from Rexton, they're Marcus's weakness. We call him, offer a trade, the files for Lyra. You think he'll agree? No. Marin's smile held no warmth. But it'll distract him long enough for us to get inside. The warehouse appeared ahead, a massive structure of corrugated metal and concrete, lit by security lights that turned everything into harsh shadows. 3 cars sat in the lot, including the gray sedan from the footage. Dorian's pulse hammered in his ears. Marin parked 2 blocks away, killed the lights. She pulled out her phone, dialed a number she'd saved under ML. Marcus Landry answered on the first ring. Ms. Vega, unexpected. I have something you want, Mr. Landry. Marin's voice stayed calm, professional. Files from Rexton Vale. Everything about your operations. Client lists, transaction records, offshore accounts. Enough to end you. A pause. Bold claim. Want to test it? Here's a sample. She rattled off 3 account numbers, 2 names, 1 transaction amount. The silence that followed told Dorian everything. She'd just proven she had the real files. What do you want? Marcus's voice had gone cold. Lyra Hale, unharmed, in exchange for the files. The woman stole from me. Rexton stole from you. She was collateral damage. Now she's a bargaining chip. Marin glanced at Dorian. You have 30 minutes to decide. After that, these files go to every federal agency that would love to take you apart. She hung up. Dorian stared. Did you just... Gave us a window. Marin climbed out of the car, moved to the trunk. When she opened it, Dorian saw equipment that had no business being in a civilian vehicle. Tactical flashlights, what looked like a police scanner, and something wrapped in cloth that he really hoped wasn't a weapon. Who are you really? He asked. Marin looked at him directly. Someone who learned the power respects power. Now come on, we've got 28 minutes. Would you walk into hell for someone who walked out on you? Share your answer below. The warehouse door was unlocked. That was the first sign something was wrong. Dorian reached for the handle, expecting resistance, expecting alarms. Instead, it opened smooth and silent, revealing darkness that felt hungry. Marin pulled him back, shook her head, pointed to her ears, then inside. Listen first. They stood in the doorway, letting their eyes adjust. Slowly, shapes emerged, storage containers stacked against walls, a forklift abandoned in one corner, pallets of shrink-wrapped goods that could have been anything legal or otherwise. And voices, distant but growing clearer. Told you she'd cooperate once we explained the situation. She's still lying about where Rexton went. Then we make the consequences clearer. A third voice, female, shaking. I don't know where he is. I swear. Lyra. Dorian started forward, but Marin's hand clamped on his wrist like iron. She pointed to the left, where a metal staircase led to a catwalk running along the warehouse's upper level. Better vantage point. Smarter approach. They climbed carefully, each step deliberate and silent. The catwalk groaned once under their weight, and they both froze, waiting for someone to investigate. But the voices continued below, oblivious. From above, Dorian could see them now. 3 men in suits surrounding Lyra, who sat in a metal chair with her hands zip-tied behind her. Blood ran from her nose, and her left eye was swelling shut. The duffel bag sat open on a table nearby, cash visible inside. One of the men, the same one who'd knocked on the motel door, crouched in front of her. Ms. Hale, we're going to try this again. Where is Rexton Vale? I told you, his mother's house, outside Oakmont. The man shook his head slowly. We already checked. He's gone, which means you warned him. I didn't. The slap echoed through the warehouse. Lyra's head snapped sideways, more blood appearing at the corner of her mouth. Dorian's vision went red. Marin's grip on his arm tightened to the point of pain, holding him in place. She pulled out her phone, typed something fast, showed him the screen. Wait for signal. What signal? The man stood, stretched like he was warming up for exercise. Mr. Landry will be here soon. He'll want answers. I suggest you find better ones before he arrives. Please. Lyra's voice broke completely. I'm telling you everything I know. Rexton used me, just like he used everyone else. I don't know where he ran to. I don't know where he hid the rest of the money. I found that bag in the storage unit because he told me it was emergency cash, nothing more. Emergency cash, the man laughed. $400,000 in emergency cash. That's what he called it. I didn't count it. I didn't. She stopped, eyes going wide, staring at something behind the men. Dorian followed her gaze. A door at the far end of the warehouse had opened. Marcus Landry stepped through. Shorter than Dorian expected, maybe 50 years old, wearing an expensive suit that looked out of place in this industrial space. But the way the other men straightened when he entered told Dorian everything about who held power here. Marcus walked slowly toward Lyra, hands in his pockets, completely casual, like he was strolling through a park instead of approaching someone he'd had beaten. Ms. Hale, he said pleasantly, you've caused me considerable inconvenience. Lyra tried to speak, but nothing came out. Marcus continued. Rexton Vale stole from me. That's bad enough, but he also humiliated me in front of people whose respect I require. That's unforgivable. He stopped in front of her, tilted his head. So now I have a choice. I can make an example of you, show everyone what happens when people cross me, or I can use you to draw out Rexton, then make an example of both of you. I can't draw him out. He won't come for me. Perhaps not. Marcus smiled. But he might come for the man whose name he's been hiding behind. Dorian's blood went cold. Marcus pulled out his phone, showed Lyra the screen. Dorian Hale, your ex-husband, father of 1 daughter, age 7, works at Crestline Dynamics, lives in apartment 4B at Riverside Terrace. He looked at her. I wonder what Rexton would do if something happened to Mr. Hale's family. No. Lyra lunged forward, chair and all, only to be grabbed by one of the men. Leave them alone. They have nothing to do with this. They have everything to do with this. Rexton made them part of it when he forged those documents. Marcus pocketed his phone. So here's what's going to happen. We're going to pay Mr. Hale a visit, and you're going to call Rexton, tell him that if he doesn't turn himself in, we'll hurt people he tried to frame. He won't care. Then Mr. Hale's daughter dies for nothing. Marcus said it like he was discussing the weather. Your choice. Above them, on the catwalk, Dorian moved without thinking. Marin's hand grabbed for him and missed. He vaulted over the railing, dropped 12 feet, landed hard on a pallet that collapsed under his weight with a crack like gunfire. All 4 men spun toward the sound. Dorian rolled to his feet, ignoring the pain shooting through his ankle. Marcus Landry. The warehouse went silent. Marcus studied him with the same mild interest he'd shown Lyra. Mr. Hale, you've saved me a trip. We need to talk. About what? Your involvement in Rexton's theft? Your forged signatures on documents that make you legally liable? Marcus spread his hands. I'm afraid there's nothing to talk about. There is, if you want to stay out of prison. That got his attention. Marcus's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Calculation, reassessment. Explain. I have files, everything Rexton took from you. Client lists, transaction records, proof of every illegal operation you run. If anything happens to me, my daughter, or Lyra, those files go straight to federal investigators. Dorian kept his voice steady, despite his heart trying to hammer through his ribs. So, we're going to make a deal. Marcus laughed, genuine amusement. You think you can blackmail me? I think I can destroy you. Dorian pulled out his phone, showed a screenshot of the file directory from Rexton's USB drive. One phone call, that's all it takes. The men in suits moved closer, hands going to concealed weapons. But Marcus raised a hand, stopping them. His eyes stayed on Dorian's phone, mind clearly working through scenarios. Assuming those files are real, Marcus said slowly, what deal are you proposing? You let Lyra go. You leave me and my daughter alone. You forget we exist. Dorian pocketed his phone. In exchange, I give you Rexton's location. Lyra made a sound, half gasp, half sob. Marcus's eyebrows rose slightly. You know where he is? I know exactly where he is, and I know he has the rest of your money. Dorian forced himself to breathe normally. But you only get that information after Lyra walks out of here safely. Marcus considered this, tapping one finger against his thigh. And the files? Stay with someone you can't touch. If anything happens to any of us, they go public automatically. Clever. Marcus smiled. But you're assuming I care about exposure. I've been investigated before. I have lawyers, judges, politicians who owe me favors. Federal files are inconvenient, not catastrophic. These aren't just financial records. Dorian was bluffing now, hoping Rexton's files contained what he was claiming. They include communications, names of everyone you've paid off, every illegal deal you've made, the kind of evidence that turns your friends into witnesses. The warehouse went silent again. Marcus's fingers stopped tapping. Then, from above, Marin's voice rang out. He's telling the truth, Marcus. I've seen the files. They're comprehensive. Every head turned upward. Marin stood on the catwalk now, phone in hand, clearly recording. She smiled down at them. In fact, I'm looking at them right now. Would you like me to read some highlights? Let's see. Payments to Judge Morrison, Senator Chen's offshore accounts. That incident with the... Enough! Marcus's voice cracked like a whip. He stared at Marin with recognition, dawning. Vega, I should have known you'd be involved. You tried to destroy my company. I have a long memory. Marin's smile widened. So here's the deal, Marcus. Not the one Dorian offered, mine. You let everyone here walk away. In exchange, I don't send these files to every media outlet in the state, plus federal investigators, plus your business partners who would love to know how much you've been skimming. Marcus's jaw worked. Around him, his men looked uncertain, waiting for orders that didn't come. He was trapped and knew it, pride warring with survival instinct. Finally, he spoke. You're making enemies you can't afford. I've had worse. Marin descended the stairs slowly, never taking her eyes off him. Do we have a deal? Marcus looked at Dorian, at Lyra bleeding in her chair, at Marin approaching with files that could end him. The calculation in his eyes was almost visible, weighing options, measuring risks, deciding how much his empire was worth. Cut her loose, he said. One of the men moved to Lyra, produced a knife, cut the zip ties. She collapsed forward, and Dorian caught her before she hit the ground. Her face was a mess. One eye swollen, completely shut now, blood still dripping from her nose. But she was alive. Thank you, she whispered against his shoulder. Marcus stepped back, giving them space to leave. But his eyes held a promise that made Dorian's skin crawl. This isn't over, Mr. Hale, no matter what protection you think you have. Then remember this. Dorian's voice came out harder than he'd ever heard it. I've lost everything before, survived it, rebuilt from nothing. You think threatening me scares me? I've already lived through worse than you can imagine. He pulled Lyra closer. But touch my daughter, and you'll find out what a man with nothing left to lose can do. The words hung in the air like smoke. Then Marin was at his side, guiding them toward the exit. They walked out together, leaving Marcus Landry standing in his warehouse surrounded by men who just watched him blink first. Outside, rain had started again. It washed the blood from Lyra's face as they helped her into Marin's car. Dorian climbed in beside her, and Marin drove away from the docks like nothing had happened. 2 blocks away, Lyra started crying. Not from pain, from relief so overwhelming it came out in gasps and sobs that shook her whole body. Dorian held her, remembering another night 7 years ago when he'd cried like this, alone in his apartment, holding a baby, wondering how he'd survive the next day. Now, here they were, both survivors, both scarred, both alive. Marin's voice cut through. "We're not done yet." Dorian looked up. "What?" "Marcus will honor the deal for now, but men like him don't forget." She glanced in the rearview mirror, eyes meeting his. "We need to finish this, tonight." "How?" Her smile returned, sharp as glass. "We give him what he really wants. When mercy becomes weakness, do you show compassion or eliminate the threat? Comment below." The laptop screen cast blue light across Marin's face, making her look like something carved from ice. They'd returned to her property, the safe house hidden behind gates and security that suggested Marin had always been prepared for war. Lyra sat on the couch, an ice pack pressed to her swollen eye, while Marin worked at the kitchen table. The USB drive from Rexton sat plugged into her computer, files scrolling past faster than Dorian could read. "This is worse than I thought," Marin said quietly. "How worse?" Dorian leaned over her shoulder, trying to make sense of the data. Rexton didn't just steal from Marcus. He stole from Marcus's partners, Russian investors, cartel money launderers, offshore accounts belonging to people whose names I recognize from international investigations. She scrolled deeper. "This isn't just fraud. It's enough to trigger federal RICO charges against everyone involved." Lyra's voice came from the couch, thick from her swollen lip. "That's why Marcus is so desperate. It's not about the money anymore. It's about survival." Marin pulled up another file, this one filled with names, dates, and payment amounts. If these files go public, Marcus doesn't just go to prison. He gets killed. His partners will eliminate him before he can testify. Dorian processed that, watching Marin's fingers fly across the keyboard. "So, we have leverage. We have a nuclear option." Marin sat back, eyes distant. "The question is whether we're willing to use it. What does using it look like?" She turned to face him fully. "We make copies, send them to people Marcus fears more than us, his business partners, international organizations that would love to see him fall. Create enough chaos that Marcus has to spend every resource protecting himself instead of coming after you." "That's mutually assured destruction," Lyra said. "If his partners know the files exist, they'll come after all of us to keep them quiet. Unless we're untouchable." Marin's smile returned, which is where the second part comes in. Dorian didn't like the way she said that. "What second part?" Instead of answering, Marin opened a new folder on her computer. The files inside carried names Dorian recognized from news reports, politicians, judges, business leaders. And beside each name, evidence. Photos, financial records, communications that would end careers instantly. "You've been collecting this," Dorian said slowly, "for years." Marin's voice held no apology. "When Marcus tried to destroy my company, I learned something important. Information is the only real power. So I started gathering it on everyone who could threaten me, including Marcus and his entire network." Lyra stood, moving closer despite her injuries. "You were going to use this eventually. I was going to use it when necessary. Tonight became necessary." Marin closed the laptop, looked at both of them. "Here's what happens now. I leak portions of these files to specific people, just enough to make Marcus radioactive. His partners will distance themselves immediately. Law enforcement will open investigations. Within 48 hours, he'll be too busy fighting for survival to care about revenge." "And we just walk away?" Dorian asked. "You walk away. I make sure Marcus stays contained." Marin stood, moved to the window overlooking her property. "This was always going to end one of two ways. Him destroying you, or me destroying him. I've been waiting for the excuse." The words settled over the room like frost. Dorian studied Marin's reflection in the window, the woman who'd been his boss for 3 years, who he'd thought he knew, who was revealing herself as someone far more complex and dangerous than he'd imagined. "Why are you really helping me?" he asked. Marin's reflection smiled. "Because you're one of the good ones, Dorian. And good people are rare enough that I protect them when I can." She turned. Plus, watching someone rebuild their life from nothing? That's worth protecting. Before Dorian could respond, her phone rang. She answered, listened, and her expression went flat. When? A pause. Show me. She pulled up something on her screen, face going pale. Then she turned the laptop toward Dorian and Lyra. Security footage from a residential building. The timestamp showed 15 minutes ago. The location made Dorian's heart stop. Riverside Terrace. His apartment complex. 2 men in dark suits stood outside his door. One picked the lock while the other watched the hallway. They entered, disappeared from view. Emerged 3 minutes later, empty-handed, because Arden wasn't there. She was with Mrs. Chen, safe in a different apartment. But Marcus's men didn't know that. They thought they'd missed her, that Dorian had moved her somewhere hidden. Which meant they'd keep looking. Dorian's phone buzzed. Unknown number. He answered without thinking. Mr. Hale. Marcus Landry's voice, calm as ever. I've reconsidered our arrangement. My daughter wasn't there. I'm aware. Which presents a problem. You see, without leverage, I can't trust you'll keep those files quiet. A pause. So, I'm going to need new leverage. Bring me Rexton Vale, or I'll find your daughter. And when I do, you'll wish you'd cooperated. The line went dead. Dorian's hands shook. 7 years of protecting Arden, of building a safe life for her, of promising nothing would hurt her, all of it threatened by a man who saw people as chess pieces to sacrifice. He won't find her, Marin said firmly. I've already called my security team. They're moving her to a location Marcus can't touch. What location? Somewhere I keep for emergencies. Trust me, Dorian. She'll be safe. But trust felt impossible right now. Trust had gotten him into this mess. Trusting Lyra years ago, trusting that leaving her at the motel would keep her secure, trusting that Marcus would honor a deal. Every trust broken, every promise shattered. We have to give him Rexton, Lyra said quietly. Both of them turned. She'd stood, ice pack discarded. Blood still crusted at her hairline, but her eyes clear and focused. We can't, Dorian started. Yes, we can. Lyra moved closer. Rexton created this. He used both of us, framed you, stole from Marcus. He's the reason we're here. So, we give Marcus what he wants. He'll kill Rexton. Probably. Lyra's voice held no sympathy. But that's Rexton's problem. He made his choices. Now he lives, or dies, with them. Dorian stared at his ex-wife, seeing someone different than the woman who'd walked out 7 years ago. Harder now, carved by consequences into something that could sacrifice the man she'd once loved to save herself. But could Dorian do the same? There's another option, Marin said. We don't give Marcus anything. Instead, we activate the nuclear option. Release enough files that Marcus has to spend every resource defending himself. Make him so radioactive that touching you becomes too risky. That puts everyone at risk, Dorian said. Yes, but it ends this. Marin met his eyes. Sometimes the only way to survive is to make everyone else too busy dying to come after you. The choice sat heavy between them. Sacrifice Rexton to protect Arden, or unleash chaos that could consume them all, but might create enough confusion to escape in. Dorian thought about his daughter, thought about the promises he'd made to her, the life he'd built for her, the father he wanted to be. Thought about whether being a good man meant showing mercy or protecting what mattered most at any cost. His phone buzzed again. Mrs. Chen's number this time. He answered. Is she okay? She's asking for you. Mrs. Chen's voice carried worry. And Dorian, there are men outside my building, watching. They've been there for 10 minutes. Ice flooded his veins. Get her to the bathroom. Lock the door. I'm calling the police. Already done, but they're saying it'll be 20 minutes before anyone can get here. Whatever's happening, these men know they have time. Dorian looked at Marin, at Lyra, at the laptop full of files that could destroy lives or save one. Made his decision in the space between heartbeats. Send me Rexton's mother's address again, he said to Marin, and call your security team. Tell them to get to Mrs. Chen's building now, not in 20 minutes, now. Marin's eyes widened. You're going after Rexton. I'm ending this. Dorian grabbed his jacket. Whatever it takes. Lyra stepped forward. I'm coming with you? No. He's my mistake to fix. Her voice carried steel Dorian had never heard before. Plus, Rexton might run if he sees you. He won't run from me. She was right. Dorian hated that she was right, but time was a luxury they couldn't afford. Fine, but we do this my way. They were in Marin's car 90 seconds later, gravel spraying as she accelerated toward the gate. Behind them, Marin stayed at her laptop, fingers already flying across keys, preparing to unleash whatever hell she kept stored in those files. The drive to Oakmont took 40 minutes that felt like hours. Dorian called Mrs. Chen twice. Both times she reported the men were still outside, just watching, waiting. The police had arrived, questioned them, but the men claimed they were waiting for a friend and had every right to stand on public property. Legal harassment. Smart. When they finally reached Diane Vale's house, every light was on. Through the windows, Dorian could see movement, Rexton pacing, arguing with his mother, both of them clearly aware that something was wrong. Lyra climbed out first. Let me talk to him. We stay together. He won't listen to you. He doesn't respect you. Lyra's voice held brutal honesty. But he's terrified of losing me. That's our leverage. She walked to the door before Dorian could argue. Knocked once. The movement inside stopped. Then the door cracked open, Diane's face appearing. You! She looked at Lyra like she was a ghost. What happened to your face? Marcus Landry's men. Can we come in? Diane hesitated, then opened the door wider. Lyra entered, Dorian right behind her. In the living room, Rexton stood frozen, eyes going wide when he saw them. How did you... Find you? Lyra laughed, but it sounded like breaking glass. You left breadcrumbs everywhere. You're not as smart as you think, Rex. Lyra, I can explain. Explain what? That you used me, used Dorian, stole from people who kill for less? She moved closer, and Rexton actually backed up. Or maybe you want to explain why Marcus Landry's men are currently surrounding my ex-husband's daughter, waiting for the right moment to take her? Rexton's face went pale. I never meant... You never mean anything. That's your problem. Lyra pulled out her phone, showed him the security footage of the men outside Mrs. Chen's building. This is happening right now, because of you. A 7-year-old girl is terrified because you couldn't steal money without being an idiot about it. I'll fix it. You can't fix it. Dorian stepped forward. But you can end it. Marcus wants you. Give him what he wants, and he leaves everyone else alone. Rexton stared at both of them, understanding dawning. You want me to turn myself in? I want you to take responsibility for what you've done. That's murder. You're asking me to commit suicide. I'm asking you to save an innocent child. Dorian's voice stayed level, despite every instinct screaming to drag Rexton to Marcus personally. You involved her when you forged my name. Now you uninvolve her. Silence filled the room. Diane stood in the doorway, tears streaming down her face, watching her son face consequences for the first time in his life. Then Rexton laughed, high and desperate. Why should I? What's she to me? What are you to me? I should have killed you both when I had the chance. Lyra slapped him. The sound cracked through the house. Rexton stumbled back, hand going to his face, eyes wide with shock. That child is innocent, Lyra said quietly. Something you and I haven't been in years, so yes, you're going to save her, because somewhere deep down, you're not completely worthless. And if I refuse? Dorian pulled out his phone, showed Rexton the screen. Then Marin Vega releases files that destroy Marcus, his partners, and everyone connected to them, including you. You'll spend the rest of your life running from people who make Marcus look kind. Rexton's eyes scanned the screen, reading names and numbers that represented his death sentence either way. His shoulders slumped. You're not giving me a choice. No, Dorian agreed. I'm not. Would you trade one guilty life for one innocent life? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss what happens next. Because this story is far from over. The commercial complex looked like someone had started demolishing it, then given up halfway through. Broken windows, graffiti covering every surface, weeds pushing through cracked concrete. It sat on the city's eastern edge, far enough from civilization that screams wouldn't carry. Marcus had chosen the location deliberately, somewhere he could do business without witnesses. Dorian parked 3 blocks away, hands tight on the wheel. Beside him, Rexton sat silent, face pale, eyes darting like he was calculating escape routes and finding none. In the back seat, Lyra pressed her bruised face against the window, watching rain streak across the glass. "Last chance," Dorian said. "We can still call this off." Rexton's laugh came out broken. "And go where? Do what? Marcus will find me eventually. This way, at least maybe he's satisfied enough to leave everyone else alone." He looked at Dorian. "For what it's worth. I'm sorry. About all of it. Sorry doesn't fix anything. I know." Rexton opened his door, stepped out into the rain. "But it's all I've got." They'd arranged the meeting through Marin, a call to Marcus's number, an offer he couldn't refuse. Rexton Vale in exchange for permanent peace. No files released, no investigations, no revenge. A clean trade that let everyone walk away alive, except Rexton. Dorian climbed out, Lyra following. They walked toward the complex together, three people bound by history and mistakes that had led them to this moment. Above them, the sky churned with clouds that looked like they were trying to decide whether to pour or explode. The entrance gaped open, doors torn off years ago, interior a maze of rubble and darkness. Dorian pulled out his phone, used the flashlight to navigate. Lyra stayed close, one hand gripping the back of his jacket. Rexton walked ahead, shoulders squared like he was heading to his own execution, which he probably was. They found Marcus in what used to be a loading bay, a vast open space where trucks once delivered goods. Now it held only shadows and the three men in suits who stood flanking Marcus like palace guards. He turned when they entered, smile spreading across his face. "Mr. Hale, punctual as always." "We had a deal," Dorian said. "Rexton for peace." "Indeed we did." Marcus's eyes moved to Rexton, assessing him like merchandise. "Mr. Vale, you've caused me considerable trouble." Rexton lifted his chin. "Send me the bill." "Oh, I intend to." Marcus pulled out his phone, typed something. "But first, let's verify something." He turned the screen toward Dorian. Security footage showed Mrs. Chen's building, but now the men outside were leaving, climbing into a black SUV, driving away. The timestamp showed 30 seconds ago. "My men are standing down," Marcus said. "Your daughter is safe, as promised." Relief flooded through Dorian, so intense his knees nearly buckled. Arden was safe. That was all that mattered. "Now," Marcus continued, pocketing his phone, "about the files." "What about them?" "I need assurance they won't surface. That means I need Ms. Vega here, in person." "That wasn't the deal. The deal was peace. Peace requires trust, and I don't trust anyone I can't see." Marcus's smile widened. "So call her. Tell her to come here. Once I verify the files are destroyed, everyone walks away." Dorian's instinct screamed warning. "She won't come." "Then we have a problem, because without those files destroyed, Mr. Vale's sacrifice means nothing. I'll still have to eliminate anyone who knows what's in them." Marcus gestured casually at Dorian and Lyra. "Starting with you." The three men in suits moved closer, hands going to weapons concealed under their jackets. Dorian calculated distances, exits, possibilities. They were 20 feet from the entrance, but the men would shoot before they made it 5. Rexton stepped forward. "Let them go. They're not part of this." "They became part of this when you involved them." Marcus studied Rexton with the interest of someone examining an insect. "You really thought you could steal from me? That I wouldn't find you? I thought I was smarter than you." Rexton's voice held resignation. "Guess I was wrong." "Yes, you were." Marcus nodded to his men. "Take him." The men moved to grab Rexton, but Lyra suddenly lunged forward, putting herself between them. "Wait." Everyone froze. "I know where the rest of the money is," she said. "The 400,000 was just emergency cash. Rexton hid the rest, all 15 million. I can take you to it." Rexton stared at her. "Lyra, what are you... saving your worthless life one last time?" She looked at Marcus. "New deal. I give you the money, you let all 3 of us walk away. You get your money back, we get our lives. Clean trade." Marcus considered this, eyes calculating. "Where is it?" "Storage facility, North Side, Unit 347. Lyra pulled out a key from her pocket. "I can take you there now. Or you're lying to buy time. Or I'm telling the truth because I'm tired of running." Lyra met his gaze without flinching. "Your choice. Take Rexton now and never see your money, or let us show you where it is and get everything you want." The warehouse went silent except for rain hammering the broken roof. Marcus weighed options, pride against pragmatism, revenge against recovery. Then Dorian's phone buzzed. He pulled it out, Marin's number. Against every instinct, he answered. "Dorian." Her voice came fast, urgent. "Get out, now. I just intercepted communications. Marcus has a second team positioned around that building. He's planning to kill all of you once Rexton's secured." Ice flooded Dorian's veins. He looked up at Marcus, who was smiling like he knew exactly what the phone call contained. "Problem, Mr. Hale?" Marcus asked. Dorian hung up without responding, looked at Lyra, at Rexton, both of them trusting him to find a way out of this. Thought about Arden, safe with Mrs. Chen, who would grow up without a father if he died here tonight. Made a decision. "The files are already out," he said. Marcus's smile vanished. "Marin sent them to 5 different news organizations 20 minutes ago. Delayed release. They go public in 2 hours unless she cancels the upload. So if anything happens to any of us, the world sees everything you've been hiding." Marcus's face went dark. "You're bluffing." "Am I? Call her. She'll tell you the same thing." Dorian stepped forward, ignoring the weapons tracking him. "You wanted mutually assured destruction? You got it. Now everyone loses unless we all walk away." The men in suits looked at Marcus, waiting for orders. He stared at Dorian, jaw working, mind clearly racing through scenarios. Outside, thunder cracked close enough to rattle the building. Then Marcus started laughing. Deep, genuine laughter that echoed off broken walls. "You magnificent bastard," he said. "You actually did it, turned my own tactics against me." "I learned from the best," Dorian replied. "Clearly." Marcus waved his men back. "Tell Ms. Vega to cancel the upload. In exchange, I'll honor our original deal. Rexton stays, you leave. The files stay buried, my business continues. Everyone survives. And if Marin refuses, then we all go down together, which helps no one." Marcus looked at Rexton. "What do you say, Mr. Vale? Willing to sacrifice yourself so your victims can live?" Rexton's eyes moved between Dorian and Lyra, landing finally on Lyra. Something in his expression softened. Regret, maybe, or acceptance. "Do it. Let them go." "Rex," Lyra started, "for once in my life, let me do something right." He looked at Dorian. "Take care of your daughter. Be the father I never learned to be." The words hung heavy. Dorian wanted to feel satisfaction. Wanted to feel like justice was being served. Instead, he just felt tired. Tired of running, fighting, surviving. Tired of a world where good people got hurt and bad people made deals. But Arden was safe. That was all that mattered. He pulled out his phone, called Marin. She answered immediately. "Cancel the upload," he said. "Dorian!" "Cancel it. Marcus gets Rexton. We get out alive. It's done." A pause. Then, "It's canceled." Marcus pulled out his own phone, verified something on his screen, nodded, confirmed. "Ms. Vega has stopped the upload." He looked at his men. "Let them go." The men stepped back, creating a path to the exit. Dorian grabbed Lyra's arm, started walking. Behind them, Rexton called out, "Lyra!" She stopped, turned. "I did love you. In my own terrible way." His smile looked broken. "I'm sorry I didn't know how to show it." Lyra's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't respond. Just turned and kept walking. They made it outside, rain soaking them instantly. Behind them, the building stayed quiet. No gunshots, no screams. Just Marcus conducting business the way he always had. Eliminating problems efficiently and without emotion. Marin's car appeared at the end of the block, headlights cutting through rain. They ran to it, climbed in, and she drove away before anyone could change their minds. 2 blocks away, Lyra started sobbing. Not gentle tears, the kind of crying that comes from places too deep for words. Dorian put his arm around her, and she collapsed against him, shaking with grief for the man she'd loved, and the choices that had led them all here. "It's over," Marin said from the front seat. "Marcus will honor the deal. You're safe now." But as they drove through streets that looked the same as always despite everything that had changed, Dorian couldn't shake the feeling that nothing was ever truly over. That deals with men like Marcus came with expiration dates hidden in fine print. That survival was just another word for delaying the inevitable. His phone buzzed. "Mrs. Chen. Arden's asking for you. When can you come get her?" He texted back, "On my way. Be there in 30 minutes. And for the first time all night, Dorian smiled. Because whatever happened next, whatever bills came due for tonight's choices, he'd face them tomorrow. Tonight, he was going home to his daughter. Would you trust a deal with the devil if it saved your child? Share your thoughts below, and make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. Because the real question isn't whether this is over, it's whether you're ready for what comes next. 3 weeks later, Dorian's life looked almost normal. Almost. Arden hummed while doing homework at the kitchen table, pencil moving across math problems she'd conquer before dinner. The apartment smelled like the chicken he'd put in the oven an hour ago, windows open to let in autumn air that finally didn't carry summer's weight. Everything felt peaceful, safe, like the nightmare had been exactly that, just a bad dream that faded with morning light. Except Dorian couldn't stop checking the windows, couldn't stop noting exits, keeping his phone charged, maintaining awareness of everyone within 50 feet of his daughter. The survival instincts that had carried him through those weeks refused to turn off, even though Marcus Landry had kept his word. No threatening calls, no black SUVs, no midnight knocks on the door. Just silence that felt too perfect to trust. "Dad?" Arden looked up from her homework. "You okay?" "Fine, baby. Why?" "You're doing that thing again, where you stare at nothing and your jaw gets tight." She put down her pencil. "Are you worried about something?" Smart kid, too smart sometimes. Dorian crossed to the table, kissed the top of her head. "Just thinking about work stuff, nothing important. Mom says lying is bad." The word mom made his chest tight. Lyra had been staying at a women's shelter across town, getting counseling, slowly rebuilding a life she'd shattered years ago. She'd called twice, once to thank Dorian for saving her, once to ask if she could see Arden someday. Not now, not soon, but someday when she'd earned the right. Dorian had said maybe. Maybe someday. If Lyra proved she could stay clean, stay stable, stay the kind of person who wouldn't destroy everything she touched. "You're right," he told Arden. "I am worried. But not about anything that's going to hurt you. That's a promise." She studied his face with eyes too old for 7. "You always keep your promises." "Always." His phone buzzed, Marin's name on the screen. He answered, moving to the living room where Arden couldn't hear. "Everything okay?" he asked. "Define okay." Marin's voice carried tension. "Can you come to my office? There's something you need to see." "Now?" "Yes, now." 20 minutes later, he sat in Marin's office, the real one. Not the public-facing space where she met clients. This room held computers with encryption software, filing cabinets with locks that looked military-grade, and walls lined with monitors showing security feeds from locations Dorian didn't recognize. Marin pulled up footage on her main screen. This was taken yesterday, Federal Building downtown. The video showed Marcus Landry entering through revolving doors, flanked by lawyers. He looked composed, confident, completely unconcerned. But Marin fast-forwarded to him leaving 3 hours later, and his expression had changed. Drawn, pale, angry in a way that suggested he'd just received very bad news. "What happened?" Dorian asked. "Grand jury indictment." Marin pulled up a document. Federal prosecutors are charging him with racketeering, money laundering, and conspiracy. Looks like someone leaked information about his operations. "Someone leaked." Dorian stared at her. "You said you canceled the upload." "I did, but I never said I deleted the files." Her smile carried no warmth. "Marcus let you walk away, which I respect, but he's still a monster who hurts innocent people. So, I made sure the information found its way to people who could use it. Anonymously, untraceable, perfectly legal. He'll know it was you. He'll suspect, but he can't prove it. And even if he could, he's going to be too busy fighting federal charges to come after anyone." She leaned back in her chair. "You're safe, Dorian. For real this time." Relief and worry warred in his chest. "And when he beats the charges, when his lawyers get him off, then I have backup plans B through Z." Marin's eyes stayed steady on his. "I told you, I protect good people. That includes you and Arden. Whatever it takes." Dorian wanted to argue, wanted to say he didn't need protection, that he could handle his own problems. But the truth was simpler. He was a single father working logistics, not a player in the kind of wars Marin fought. Without her, he'd be dead or worse. "Thank you," he said quietly. "Thank me by living a normal life. Take care of your daughter. Stop looking over your shoulder." She stood, moved to the window overlooking the city. "The world has enough victims. I'd rather create survivors." They stood in silence, watching traffic flow below, like nothing had happened, like people weren't fighting invisible wars in boardrooms and warehouses across the city. Eventually, Dorian left, driving back to his apartment where Arden waited, safe and unaware of how close she'd come to losing everything. That night, after Arden fell asleep, Dorian stood at her bedroom door watching her breathe. 7 years he'd been doing this, watching her sleep, making sure she was safe, promising himself he'd never let anything hurt her. He'd kept that promise, barely. By luck and Marin's resources and choices, he still wasn't sure were right, but she was safe. His phone buzzed quietly. Unknown number. Every instinct screamed not to answer, but his hand moved anyway. "Hello?" Silence, then breathing, then a voice he'd hoped never to hear again. "Mr. Hale?" Marcus Landry. "This call is a courtesy. Professional courtesy, you understand?" Marcus's voice stayed calm, measured, like they were discussing business. "I'm told you had nothing to do with the federal investigation. Ms. Vega assures me you were completely unaware of her insurance policy." "That's true. I believe you, which is why I'm calling, to inform you that despite current complications, I always honor my agreements. You and your daughter remain untouchable, as promised." Dorian's hand tightened on the phone. "And Lyra?" "Is not part of our agreement, but for the sake of goodwill, I'll extend the same protection to her. Consider it a gift." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because men like us, survivors who've rebuilt from nothing, we understand each other. We do what's necessary to protect what matters." A pause. "You made smart choices, Mr. Hale. Smarter than I expected. I respect that. I just wanted my daughter safe. And she is. Keep her that way. Stay out of my business, and I'll stay out of yours." The sound of a lighter clicking, a cigarette being lit. "But Mr. Hale, tell Ms. Vega that insurance policies have a way of expiring, and when this one does, I'll remember who filed it." The line went dead. Dorian stood frozen, phone still pressed to his ear, listening to dead air. Then he moved to his bedroom, pulled out the burner phone Marin had given him for emergencies, texted her the conversation, word for word. Her response came immediately. "I know, already prepared, don't worry." But worry felt like breathing now. Automatic, unstoppable, necessary for survival. Dorian deleted the texts, destroyed the burner phone like Marin had taught him, and returned to Arden's doorway. She'd rolled over in her sleep, one arm hanging off the bed, face peaceful in a way that made his chest ache. 7 years ago, he'd stood in this same spot, holding a 3-month-old who wouldn't stop crying, wondering how he'd survive the next day. Now that baby was a kid who did her homework and asked if he was okay and trusted him to keep her safe. He'd survived. They'd survived, and whatever came next, federal investigations or Marcus's revenge or complications he couldn't predict, they'd survive that too, because that's what they did. 2 days later, the doorbell rang. Dorian answered to find a courier holding a small package. No return address, just his name in elegant handwriting. Inside, a first edition book. To Kill a Mockingbird, and tucked in the front cover, a note in Marin's handwriting. The one thing that doesn't abide by majority rule is a person's conscience. Atticus had the right idea. Sleep well, Dorian. You earned it. M. He set the book on his shelf next to Arden's school photos and the few possessions he'd accumulated while rebuilding his life. Then he made dinner, helped with homework, watched that cooking show Arden loved where contestants cried over collapsed soufflés. Normal, safe, boring in the best possible way. That night, as he tucked Arden into bed, she grabbed his hand. "Dad, can I ask you something?" "Always." "That lady who came to Mrs. Chen's building, the one who took me to her house for a few days, was she your friend?" Marin had handled Arden's protection personally during those critical hours, keeping her safe while Dorian dealt with Marcus. Arden had never asked about it, and Dorian had hoped she wouldn't. "Yes," he said carefully. "She's my friend. She was really nice, and she told me something." Arden's eyes stayed on his face. "She said you were the bravest person she knew, that you'd do anything to protect me. That's true. She also said that when bad things happen, good people don't run away. They stay and fight to make things better. Arden squeezed his hand. Is that what you did, Dad? Fought to make things better? Dorian's throat closed. 7 years old, and already she understood more than he wanted her to. Already she could see past his careful lies to the truth underneath. Yes, baby, that's what I did. Good. She smiled, releasing his hand. I want to be like you when I grow up, someone who doesn't run away. She rolled over, closing her eyes, already drifting towards sleep. Dorian sat there watching her, feeling something he hadn't felt in weeks, not just relief or exhaustion, but pride. Pure, uncomplicated pride that despite everything, despite the violence and fear and choices no one should have to make, he'd shown his daughter what it meant to stand firm. He'd shown her what love looked like when it had teeth. As he stood to leave, his phone buzzed one final time. A text from an unknown number. He almost deleted it without reading. But something made him look. The message contained just 6 words. The courthouse, tomorrow. 9 a.m. Lyra. No explanation, no context, just a time and place and the name of someone who'd dragged him into hell and somehow survived beside him. Dorian stared at the message, thumb hovering over the delete button. He could ignore it, could pretend he'd never seen it, could go back to the normal life he'd fought so hard to protect. Or he could show up, find out what she wanted, maybe give her the closure she needed, or the forgiveness she'd never asked for. He thought about Arden's words. Good people don't run away. Thought about the father he wanted to be, the man he wanted his daughter to see when she looked at him. Deleted the message, turned off his phone, went to bed, because sometimes the bravest thing you could do wasn't fighting. It was knowing when to walk away. Outside, rain started again, soft, steady, washing the city clean of everything the night had brought. Inside, Dorian closed his eyes and finally, after weeks of surveillance and fear and sleepless nights watching for threats, let himself sleep. The war was over. They'd survived. And tomorrow, when Arden woke up asking for pancakes and complaining about math homework, he'd make breakfast and help with problems and promise her again that everything would be okay, because that's what fathers did. They kept promises, even the impossible ones. But as sleep pulled him under, his last conscious thought flickered like a warning light. What did Lyra want at the courthouse? And somewhere across the city, in a car parked outside his building, a black SUV sat with its engine running and headlights off, watching, waiting. The window lowered slowly. A voice spoke into a phone. Mr. Landry wants to know, should we proceed? A pause, then a response that made the night feel colder. Not yet. Let him think he's safe. Let him get comfortable. Then we remind him that some debts never expire. The window rose. The SUV pulled away, disappearing into rain and darkness like it had never been there at all. And in his apartment, Dorian Hale slept peacefully, unaware that the story he thought had ended was only waiting for its next chapter to begin. Thank you for following Dorian's journey. If this story moved you, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because in this world, peace is just the calm between storms. Drop a comment sharing your thoughts, and remember, every story shared inspires someone else to keep fighting. We'll see you in the next one.